just to let you, there we go. That was part of it. I was just gonna let you know we are recording this and we will have it available later if you need to refer to it. But first I wanted to welcome and introduce Daniel Phillips. He is our demographer and consultant to the city for the districting process. And he's here to kind of give a brief overview of what we are doing in the city as far as districting. And really the purpose of this workshop and the format is we want to provide info, answer any questions, and also receive feedback from you on any communities of interest, and assist you with submitting any draft maps. I know Jim Guthrie's on here and he's submitted quite a few, so I think you know how to do it, but we're definitely here to answer questions. So with that, I'll just let Daniel jump into his slides. And again, you're able to speak, and if you want to ask a question at any time, just use the raise hand function and go for it. Thank you so much. Go ahead, Daniel.
All right, so let me see if I can get this working. All right, so can you all see this first slide here?
Yes.
All right, so this is a public workshop on districting, and just a brief reminder of what we're doing here. We're switching from the at-large election system, where voters elect their city council members citywide, to the by-district system, where a city council member has to live in a certain area and can only be voted on by residents of that area. And that is because of this legislation that was written to specifically encourage by-district elections, and has made it much easier for cities and counties and school districts to be sued if they are not using by-district election systems for claims of racially polarized voting. So in order to avoid having to pay enormous amounts of money and legal fees defending or fighting such a case, the city is going to be moving voluntarily to this by-district system. So here's the process that the city is undergoing. There are two initial pre-draft hearings that took place during city council meetings earlier this summer. Then we're having two public workshops. One took place last month, and then this is the second of those, to provide training on public mapping tools and guidance on drawing maps. We have the deadline for submitting draft maps is February 4th. Then we will process those maps and release them for the public to consider on February 15th. Those maps will be posted to the city's districting website. Then we'll have two hearings on draft maps, February 22nd and March 8th, where the city council and members of the public will come together to discuss the maps that have been drawn by, we've actually already have over 100 submitted maps, so there'll be plenty to discuss, and eventually arrive at one to adopt on March 22nd. So I show this slide a lot, but it's important because it's what we're bound by. It's the constraints that the federal and state government have laid upon cities that are undergoing this process. So we have to draw districts that are equal in population, and by population we mean everyone, including children and non-citizens. We must follow the Federal Voting Rights Act by not doing anything that would dilute the voting strength of any protected class group, a historically marginalized or disadvantaged group. But on the flip side, not practice racial gerrymandering, where you make race or ethnicity our main consideration when drawing your district boundaries. Then we have the state criteria, which is actually a rank order of criteria. So if you can't follow all four, then you want to try to privilege the higher criteria. So the first is to draw districts that are contiguous, meaning they're just one piece each, not disconnected pieces. Second is to not divide neighborhoods and communities of interest, which are socioeconomic geographic areas that should be kept together. Third is to follow easily identifiable boundaries like major roads, creeks, highways, railroads, etc. And fourth is to draw districts that are compact in that they do not bypass one group of people to get to a more distant group of people. And then we're not considering any partisan data in this process. Now, if you have ensured that you've followed the federal and state criteria, then you can consider other traditional districting principles, such as respecting voters' choices or continuity in office by avoiding having a district where 2 or more incumbent council members live, so that you don't force one of those incumbents to leave the council just because of the way the lines are drawn, but rather leave it up to the voters to decide whether each one has deserved re-election. And lastly, if there is any anticipated future population growth, you can account for that slightly while not deviating too much from equal population. So when it comes to defining neighborhoods, we like to ask 2 questions. First, what are the neighborhoods? And second, what are their geographic boundaries? So here we have some examples of physical features that might define neighborhood boundaries, such as natural neighborhood dividing lines, areas around parks or schools, and other neighborhood landmarks. So we hope to get public testimony about what the neighborhoods are. But if we don't get that, then we have planning records and other similar documents that will hopefully provide that information. Going beyond neighborhoods, we have this further term, communities of interest. And here we're also asking 2 questions. First, what defines your community? So we're talking about a geographic area that has some shared issue or a characteristic that defines it. Often a shared social or economic interest that is impacted by city policies. So we'd like to hear what these communities are so that we can make sure that we are respecting them. But secondly, we want to know, would this community benefit from being included within a single district for purposes of its effective and fair representation? Or would it benefit more from having multiple representatives? So only if the answer to the second question is yes, does it need to be kept undivided. And again, we're not talking about any partisan considerations here. So here we have a summary of the city's demographics. And this data is almost completely the same as what I've shown in the past, except the very first number, which is the 2020 adjusted population. That's the official data that we have to use, that the state mandates. The state actually took the census results and adjusted it by reallocating prisoner populations to their last known residential address. So that gives us an official total of 18,469. And of those, just over 14,000 are people who are eligible to vote. And we look at the racial ethnic breakdown among those, because when it comes to following the Federal Voting Rights Act, this is the key data we have to use, the citizen voting age population. And there we see that 4/5 of the city are non-Hispanic white, and just about 13% are Hispanic. You can see similar racial or ethnic breakdowns for voter registration and turnout. And here you can also see various demographic data about the city, such as language spoken at home, age, household income. So it's a wealthier city where you have 46% who are in $75,000 to $200,000 a year. And most housing is owned and single family. Now, if you look to the left side here, you'll see each of the 4 districts must contain about 4,620 people. So that's just taking that 18,469 figure and dividing it by 4. So if you want to see some maps of this demographic data, we encourage you to check out the story map. So that leads me to the mapping tools that we have available. We have different tools for different purposes and for different levels of comfort and interest. And all these can be found at the city's website, arroyogrande.org/district elections. And there you'll find a simple learn about your community story map, which I already mentioned, a simple review draft maps tool, the interactive review map. You have a paper and Excel-based simple draw draft map tools, and an easy to use online draw neighborhood or draw draft map tool, which is District R. So whatever tool you decide to use, and even if you just want to draw on a napkin or a piece of paper and take a picture and email it in, we welcome your maps, and we'll make sure that we present every map that we receive in a standard form that is professional and is consistent no matter what source it came from. So that leads me to my final slide, which is any neighborhoods we should be aware of what communities of interest are there in the city, and lastly, any questions about the mapping tools. And I'd be happy to go into a demonstration of some of those tools if requested. So thank you for your attention.
Okay, thank you. So for Jim and John, if you would like to see and kind of a demonstration of the tools, go ahead and speak up, and we can do that. Otherwise, we'd love to hear from you about communities of interest, kind of areas of the city that we should be taking into consideration. So please let us know if you'd like to do that or have a demonstration of the tools.
I'm good, John. It's up to you.
I have sat through this at the council meeting, but I just wanted to go through it again to get, so I don't have any really outstanding questions. One of them just came up just a minute ago when he was talking. Sorry, Daniel. Are entities or people from outside the city limits allowed to draw maps?
Yes. So let me share my screen with you and show you the city website. So you'll see it's arroyogrande.org/district elections. So anyone can come and access this page. It doesn't restrict you from accessing the page if you're outside the city limits. And so you'll see the online mapping tools and paper mapping tools to the right here. And so anyone can download one of the paper maps and draw on it and send it in and email it in. And there's no email screening for people outside the city limits. Anyone can go onto the District R tool and build a plan. It's not checking where you live. So anyone can make a map. I can make a map. What's important is what the map looks like, and it's going to be judged by its merits. And so maybe someone who doesn't live in the city limits of Arroyo Grande but works there all the time, knows a lot about the city, would still they might draw a really good map that the council likes, the public likes, and will be worthy of adoption. So there's definitely no restriction that you have to be an Arroyo Grande resident within the city limits.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
So John, did you want to go ahead and see some of those online tools? We can absolutely go through
No,
those.
it's not necessary. I trying to keep up on it as much as I can.
I don't need the tools, but I do have some questions. So,
All right, go for it.
okay. So one, I did go back and watch the previous workshop. So I didn't realize that the numbers we were working with were not the final numbers. So how much did it change between the estimated numbers and the actual numbers? You may have given that in your presentation, but I missed it.
Yeah, that's a very good question. So the number that I reported for the city's population was 18,469. And so we can compare that with the, let me find what was reported last. So that would be,
I think it's about 400 people different, but
18,132.
pretty close.
So we're talking about a difference of about 300.
About 300.
So if you have been using the estimated data, and that has been what has been displayed on the tools until just today.
Oh,
You have been using data that is estimated, unofficial, and yet very, very close to the official data. And so the plan that you may or may not have drawn using the estimated data could still very well be perfectly fine and perfectly within the threshold of acceptability. And in fact, we'll even maps that are not within the threshold of, we usually say 10% of deviation, we're still going to post and present every single map that has been received.
Sure.
And if some adjustments have to be made, there'll be opportunity to do that. If the council really likes a map that is slightly out of balance because it was drawn using estimated data and it's changed a little bit, then we can make some refinements to it to make sure that it is adjusted or it is population balanced. So we still encourage you to use the tools, and but I do want to point out that as of, like I said, as of today, the paper mapping tools have been updated with the official data.
okay.
So if you wanted to access this, click on this, you'll see that new numbers are now appear for the population units. And so you can submit an updated version of your map if you want to use the official data here. And so you also have the ability to use the Excel version as well, where you refer to the ID numbers that are displayed for each population unit, and then use the Excel spreadsheet to assign each of those population units to a district. So all these tools are loaded with the official data.
Okay.
You can also go to the interactive review map for the city. And if you go there, you will see that the first thing that pops up is the population units with their population counts.
Okay.
And you can even check the census blocks to have them display with the official population counts. And so this is really helpful because if you want to have a finer resolution in how you draw your maps, you can see how many people live in each block. You might find this base map too cluttered. So if you go to the base map gallery up just under the title and click that, you can maybe select another base map such as the streets version. And assuming that loads correctly, but you can see that you now have, let me see if I can find that one. Okay, so you have terrain there. I'm just going to reload to see if this that helps it. You can see satellite imagery. And let's see. For some reason, the streets layer isn't showing up, but
okay.
hopefully that will work on your browser. But going back here,
Oh, sorry about that. Go ahead and finish.
the one thing that I want to emphasize is that unfortunately the district R tool still has the population estimates. So if you are using the district R tool, and you were to click on this purple button, you'll see that it says uses projected 2020 population data. So that's still the unofficial data. So if you like this tool and you want to use it, again, you're welcome to use it, and we'll accept it, and it may well still be population balanced. But if you want to make sure that you're using the official data, what you want to do is use the paper mapping tools and maybe refer to the interactive review map with the census blocks if you want the finest resolution that you get with the district R tool.
So if we made if I wanted to go back in and edit the one that I made, and I wanted to use the current data, does it matter where I started? Because I suspect I started with the easy tool.
So which tool did you use?
I'm going to say the one that was red or orange. I'm going to guess that's what I used, but it seemed like that was as I remember, it was really easy to use. But actually, can you just go back to, why don't you go to JG1, which is one of the ones I created, and because there's a question specifically I wanted to ask related to it, and maybe we can just see if that's going to come up with the latest population or not.
Jim Guthrie used the district R tool, so there's a few maps on there.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah, but there's only one that's actually public, by the way. The other ones were supposed to be draft, but so one of my next questions is how do I delete them? The ones that I don't.
So you said you were JG1?
JG1. It was made from that KISS there, so.
Jim G1. This one?
Yeah.
So
Okay.
you had some questions about this map?
Okay, so first off, can you tell me, was it made using the tool that will have the correct populations, or was it made with the tool that's going to have the estimated populations? So if I edited this right now, would I be using the latest information or not?
Yeah, you would be using the estimated data.
I'd still be using estimated data. Okay,
yeah.
So I'd have to start over, which I don't mind, but.
Well, so if you want to use District R, we only have estimated data available for it. So if you wanted to translate this map to
Oh, so when you say paper, you mean I'd have to print it, color it, and send it in on a piece of paper? Oh, okay.
Yeah, or you could download the PDF and use a PDF tool to draw on it and email that in.
Okay, so the question I have here is, so you can see I have the discontiguous section here, and that's because, and maybe if I went back with but as I remember, this census block is giant. If you zoom in, and I don't think that when I looked at it, you were going through it pretty quickly, but when I looked at it, even when you had the higher detail, this whole block here that's in green is one single census data. I think it's got 610 people in it. And so what I'm wondering is as you can see, if you could slice off the east end of this and connect those two, you'd pick up about 6 houses. I don't know how many people are in them, but there's only about 6 houses out there. So how tied are we to, in the end, based on the one we select, how tied are we to this using the census tracts as they're displayed on this map?
Hey, Jim, this is Karen Russell. How are you?
I'm doing good.
Good. I think I can help with this answer. It was back when it was Tommy Gong, but I'm sure that the recommendation would still be the same. That the county clerk recorder's office asked us to, they can't tell us what to do, of course, but they basically said it would be really, really helpful if the voting precincts were taken into effect, which I would imagine somehow mirror those census tracts, and I don't know.
Not even
But
close, Karen.
If we,
Not even
yeah,
close.
if we start carving, that may create issues for the clerk recorder. So I don't know. I think that would be their answer. I would want to know how that would be affected. Not so much could we do it technologically. You know what I mean?
Well, okay. Well, I'm wondering here first. I'll just tell you, Karen, that if you go back and click on the and put both the precincts and the census data on there, they don't match up at all. Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, the precincts are a mess. I'll just say that. They need to be fixed anyway, but they're,
Oh, well, maybe this will prompt them to do that instead. Maybe
Yeah.
we just go about it backwards then.
yeah, the precincts are not going to be helpful.
Well, they did ask. They can't tell. So
Yeah, sure. Well, I could see why they want to ask because it's a pretty major rework, although it'll help them in the long run.
okay. All right. Well, then I'll that maybe this is a good thing from that perspective.
So can we split up the census data? Can we get a more an alternative count, if you will, if we wanted to because there's another place I would think of possibly doing it as well in order to keep a neighborhood together.
Yeah, so we only split census blocks if it's like absolutely necessary in order to keep a map population balance or something. It's really hard because that is the finest resolution that we get from the census. And so if we are dividing it, we're entering the realm of estimating how many people live in that side of the block versus that side of the block. And so it can be tricky. And we only want to try to stick to the census blocks in order to be legally safe as far as only using the official population data.
Okay, so the answer is basically no.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because I think the effort there was to try to keep the village together, both the north and south sides of the village together, and the census blocks does everything it can to make that impossible. So, what was my other question? With the Latino population in general, and if you don't know the answer to this, that's fine. What was the best map that came up as far as because I'll just tell you, I tried 5 different ways and I kept coming up at 17% was always the same, was always the best district I could come up with. I was wondering if there are any of these maps, and will that be part of your groupings based on the Latino population at all?
Yeah, so I can tell you, I mean, I showed you the citywide percentage for Latinos who are eligible to vote. That is 13%. And they are not sufficiently concentrated in one area to compose more than 50% to be a majority of a district. So the best we could do for
50-50?
Yeah, so
Oh wow.
they do not constitute more than 50% in any district.
Oh, okay. All right.
When it comes to observing the Federal Voting Rights Act, if it's possible to draw a district that's 50% plus Latino citizen voting age population, we would want to do that. But there is also such a thing as an opportunity district or an influence district, where even though they may not be a majority, they are still a sizable share of the population and can exert their influence more than they would be if they were spread out. So the idea here is we want to the extent possible, draw a district that does not split up or what's called crack any concentration of Latino voters, even if it means that they're still not even close to majority. It would be the right thing to do to draw a district that is respects them as much as possible.
Okay. And the last thing is in the last meeting, you talked about how you're going to have sort of group the maps together. Am I still on there? Hello?
I can hear you.
Okay, sorry, my screen changed, so I thought maybe I got kicked out. So if you guys can still hear me, I was wondering how many groupings you think you're going to have as far as types of maps that are similar. Yeah,
I haven't had a chance to really analyze all the maps that have come in. Well, partly because it's just been so many, and it'll take some time to really process them and consider what the themes are. I can tell you that one thing I'm thinking of right now is I've seen, and this is in large part because of the way the census blocks are drawn, as you already mentioned, but there have been a lot of maps submitted that have split the village right through on East Branch Street.
exactly.
And so that brings up the question of, is that dividing a neighborhood? Is the village a neighborhood? And if so, that would be in violation of the Fair Maps Act. And so one thing that will be pretty easy and simple to present is which maps split the village and which ones don't, and to set aside the ones that keep the village together, and then consider the other option, and then we'll have the opportunity for the public and the council to weigh in as far as, is the village a neighborhood or a community of interest that should be kept in one district? If it is, then we can right off the bat eliminate all those maps that split it. And if it's not, then we can consider those as well.
So that prompts me to kind of go back to my other question, because that's exactly what I was trying to achieve, not splitting the village. Is that a sufficient reason to split a census tract?
So let me go share my screen, and we can kind of explore this question together. So I will bring up the interactive review map. And what I'll display here is the population units and the individual census blocks. And also I will display zoning areas, because if you go to the legend at the top left here, you'll see that there's a color for each of these.
Sure.
And the blue colors indicate where the village is. So if you were to zoom in, you will see that, at least as the city defines it, the village does intrude into this census block that for some forsaken reason is drawn so that it goes way up to even touch Rodeo Drive. And so if you want to keep the village whole, then you would have to have this whole census block included in such a district. So you would have to draw a district that includes the whole village and at least comes up somewhat into the hills. So that is, if we were to, now it may actually be a good reason to split a census block in this occasion, because we see that there is a very distinct difference between this parcel and these parcels, and then everything over here. You have the purple, which represents a public facility, an academy of some sort, and then you have some rural residential. So
Miller Way there too, which is traditionally part of the village.
Okay, yeah. So we may opt to split this census block right along this line. But again, like I said, that means we have to make a crude estimate. By what we do is basically count the number of houses and over here, and then we count the number of houses over here. And then we say the percentage of houses that are over here is also the same as the percentage of people that are over here. So it's a very crude estimate, and we try to avoid it whenever possible, but in this case, it might be a good idea.
Okay, because the one at the other end of town I was doing to try to balance to get the numbers to work, but maybe they'll work when we change them.
Yeah,
okay.
yeah, that block has 127 people, so it's pretty substantial, and it seems like most of the people in that block live over in this part. Just eyeballing it, but you still have a fair amount of people who live in houses out in more agricultural areas. So it is unfortunate the way the census draws their block boundaries, but we really have to take what we get almost all the time, unless it really requires it.
Okay. And so that reminds me of another question I had, and that has to, would ag land be considered a community interest because of the different zoning?
Yeah, it could very well,
even if it's
yeah,
not a neighborhood, but
it could very well be considered a community of interest. And certainly if we get testimony to that effect, that would strengthen that argument.
sure.
And so if it would benefit from being kept in one district, I think that's certainly achievable, given how it's only a couple hundred people, and then you can easily you could easily make sure that it's kept whole in one district.
Okay. All right. Those are my questions. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome. Anyone else have questions?
I have a quick one, and I'm sorry, I was doing 3 things at once. What was your answer to Jim's question that is could we split up the village as a community of interest?
Yeah, so the state law says,
I mean, I remember I just don't remember that. I remember your whole explanation. I just didn't actually hear the answer to the question at the end.
it depends on whether the public and the city decide, and after discussion, if the village is indeed a neighborhood. If it's a neighborhood, then it needs to be kept in one district.
Got it. Thank you very much. I'm sorry that I got distracted for a moment.
No
Thanks for
worries.
that question, Jim,
Mhm.
and all the other ones as well, for both you and John.
Can I ask one last question? So you mentioned I had a bunch of maps on. I think I have 4, but 3 of them were draft maps. Can I delete those? Because they're very much draft maps. Is there a way to
Yeah.
delete the map?
We're not going to worry about the draft maps
Oh, good.
are
Okay.
called works in progress. We're only going to take the ones that are shared on the public gallery.
Okay.
So you don't have to worry about deleting it. We'll just, as long as if you submit multiple versions on the public gallery, you could put in the name saying, use this version or something to that effect, so that we.
Well,
we
you
would-
don't actually know who's submitting them, so
Yeah, that's,
they'll claim all the ones I don't like.
Yeah, that's an unfortunate aspect of District R is it can be totally anonymous. I mean, in one sense, that could be a good thing, but in another sense, if we need to contact people or have some reason for knowing who drew it, then we're out of luck unless they choose to state their name.
Okay. And when they come back in front of council, even if they were done using the estimated totals, will the maps that are presented there have the current totals?
Yeah, so what we'll do is we'll take what they are is block assignment files. So everything in District R has a block assignment. So whatever district you assigned a particular block to, we have just a long Excel spreadsheet that says that, and then we import that into our redistricting software, and then it will come up with a map that uses the official data. So it will tell us whether each plan is population balanced based on the official data.
Okay. All right, thank
And
you.
that, yeah, and that is what we'll present to the council and the public is we'll share all these maps and tell what the population data is for all of them.
Okay,
Great,
thank you.
great questions. Is there do we want to talk any more about communities of interest? If you have any kind of segments of the city that you might consider a community, that should be, obviously we've been talking about the village, but if there's any other ones that we'd like to add to Daniel's list to consider.
Well, I do think on the west side here, over near Elm Street Park, you do have a lot of multifamily in that area that have probably a different set of interests than maybe some of the more suburban areas. But I'm not sure how you talk about that as a community of interest, other than it's very dense.
Yeah, for sure. And you can see that the orange indicates where you have multifamily apartments.
Yeah.
So you definitely get that more along Elm Street, as you mentioned. And so it could be a community of interest in the sense that they have certain concerns or interests that people who live in single family housing do not. And they live closer to each other, and there might be more noise concerns. And we know that they would probably be more likely to be renters, and so they would be impacted by any city regulations about rent or rent control. So if you were to go and click the layer that shows percent renter housing,
Okay.
you'll see that we get slightly higher percentages over there.
Mm-hmm.
The unfortunate thing about this is that it's this data is reported at the block group level, which is bigger than a block. So it may not be as useful, especially when we're dealing with a small city like Arroyo Grande. So, but you can, what we do have that is block by block is the racial ethnic data. So you'll see that, like you already mentioned, there really aren't any significant concentrations of Latinos. However, if you were to look at minorities, which includes Latinos, Asians, Blacks, American Indians, etc., then you can see a bit more of a pattern emerge where you have slightly higher numbers in this western edge of the city, especially in this vicinity, and up toward the freeway as well. So if you were to want to draw a district that is conscious of the minority vote, you would probably want to refer to this data layer.
Yeah, I will say one observation I had is that the Latino or actually ethnic voting voters versus the populations don't match up all that well either. So there's,
Yeah.
which means there's a lot of kids probably in one
Yeah.
area and not a lot of voters. Yeah.
Or non-citizens. So
That's true. Yeah.
so if we were to look at total Latino, we would probably get more,
Much more
we would-
content in that area.
yeah. And again, the warmer colors indicate higher percentages.
Mhm.
So I think if you clicking on percent CVAP minority probably gives a better indication of what to look at. You'll see that there are a couple red blocks, but they're very small. There's only 8 people here and 12 people in here.
Right.
So as compared to these blocks, which have 120, 170,
Mhm.
and how many live here? 338. So we're talking here about 35 to 50%. So it would still be a majority white block, but you have a sizable percentage of minorities who live here.
Mhm. Okay.
All right, any other communities of interest? John, if you had any input or if you're just listening in, that's fine
I'm
too.
I'm just listening. Thank you.
Or any other questions that either myself or Daniel can answer?
No.
I'm good. Yeah.
It looks like, so our deadline for submission of draft maps is February 4th. That's correct, right, Daniel? I have that written down. Okay.
Mhm.
So we have quite a bit of time still to submit draft maps. So you can definitely keep working on those. Our next hearing is in February, and we have some time to kind of work through and ask any questions. I'm available. You both know where I am. So you're very active in the community. I know you know how to get in touch with me if you have questions, and I can always route those to Daniel as well. But thank you for being here on a Thursday evening to talk about elections and districting. So appreciate your participation. Any last thoughts you'd like to share?
Just a thanks from me too, gentlemen. Thank you for being here.
Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and I would just like to say, thanks for bearing with us. We know that this isn't ideal. And in an ideal world, we would have had all the official data on all the tools right at the very beginning, but we're living in a world where not much is ideal. So we just had to work with what we have, and even the census blocks aren't drawn as we would like. So we'll do our best, and we're doing our best. So thank you for your patience, and we hope to give you good results.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Thank you, guys. Bye now.
Daniel, do you want to hang on just a little bit, see if anyone pops in? I don't think they will, but just in case. Maybe give it like 15 minutes and then we can.
Yeah, I'm going to